Welcome to Blueprint for Life, the podcast designed to encourage, uplift, and challenge you on your journey. In just a moment, we will be joined by our host, Elder Lawrence McCarter Jr. We are thrilled you are willing to join us on this transformational ride. At Blueprint for Life, we believe each of us has a unique blueprint crafted by God Himself. This podcast will explore how to discover and unlock that blueprint, allowing you to live a life of purpose, fulfillment, and joy. Through insightful conversations, thought-provoking interviews, and biblical truths, we will delve into the keys that can unlock your potential. Together, we will navigate the challenges, setbacks, and triumphs that come our way, always relying on the timeless wisdom found in God's Word.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Blueprint. It is one more time that we are hanging out again together. I am so glad that we are just having this opportunity just to hang out, hash it out. We'll talk about what's going on in the world, in our world individually, as well as the more generalized, broader world around us. It has been another week, another good old-fashioned 7 days since we've chatted, but I've had a good time. I just got a chance to celebrate my anniversary with my wife. It has been 13 years since we tied the knot. 13 years, man. It seems like a long time, and at the same time it feels like the blink of an eye. It feels like we just said I do sometimes, and then sometimes it feels like forever ago that we said I do. I'm gonna tell you guys, marriage is not for the faint of heart, but at the same time, I promise you, it is one of the most rewarding things I think any two people can ever do. It is the binding and the blending of two totally different people, but at the same time, when you begin to find that oneness between you and another person, and it's not something that happens overnight, and it's not something that happens all at once, and there will be times where you will have that oneness, and then there will be times where you will distinctly feel the differences between you and that other person. So it is a lifelong journey, but it is a rewarding journey. I can't promise you that it will be easy, but I can say that it will definitely be worth it. In our day and time, we don't have a whole lot of examples of people who have long-standing marriages. It's one of those things you learn by doing, but I'm grateful for the time that we've been married, and it has been a ride, man, a roller coaster. We've had our ups and our downs, we've had our twists and our turns, but I don't think I'd trade anything for the journey. We've made it this far, and I'm looking forward to continuing on. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I have been made aware that there are some difficulties with finding some of my later episodes on some of the other mediums that I have set up my podcast to be located on, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, things like that. There is some difficulty with locating them. I am working on getting that taken care of. So I ask my listenership to just be patient, and I'm working on it. I promise you, I'm working on it. But hopefully I'll be able to get all that straightened out as soon as possible, and we'll be able to get back on track as soon as humanly possible, and all the episodes will be available for your listening pleasure as soon as possible. All right, now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's jump right in. This is episode 16, and we're going to switch tracks just a little bit. I'm going to talk this time around about a particularly deadly poison that affects the lives of, in my opinion, every single person breathing this day and age. If you're breathing, I'm assuming that you're alive. If you're not breathing, then you're probably not listening to this podcast. But I think that every person alive has to wrestle with this particular poison in their life. And it's something that, unless we manage to get it under control, it can ruin our lives, it can ruin our relationships, it can ruin even the people around us. Now, what poison am I talking about? Dude, what are you talking about? Yeah, who would willingly poison themselves? Who would willingly allow themselves to be poisoned? This particular poison that I'm talking about is anger. All right? Anger. Okay, now anger can be constructive. All right? I'm not saying that all anger is bad. There's some instances where anger can be a good thing. Anger can push you to do better. Anger can move into a frustration that can cause you to move out of your circumstances. It can drive you to want to do better and to want to step out of your circumstances and to do better than where you are right now. Anger can push you to not accept the status quo and to really want to pursue better for yourself. That's not the anger that I'm talking about, though. What I'm talking about is that destructive, that self-destructive anger that can tear down and destroy with no thought of building or replacing what it has destroyed. Okay? James, the first chapter, 19th and 20th verse says, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God." Okay? This is the kind of anger that I'm talking about. The kind of anger that once it is wound up and riled up, it doesn't hear or respond to anybody else. It is the kind of anger that it's like a lit bomb, like back in the day with the old cartoons, the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, where you had the stick of dynamite and Bugs would light the stick of dynamite and it would refuse to be put out, and you could lick your fingers and put it on the fuse and it would go out for a moment and then it would light right back up and it would just continue to burn down toward the stick of dynamite. That is the kind of anger that refuses to go out and that is going to explode regardless of what you do. That is the kind of anger that I'm talking about. When you have that level of anger and that type of anger existing in your life, in your surroundings, that is the kind of anger that can become destructive, not only to yourself, but to the people that are around you. It becomes a deadly poison just waiting to destroy you and the people that are around you. There was a news report that I saw just recently about a young man, 20 years old, tow truck driver, came to repossess a vehicle, and this guy hopped in another vehicle and chased after the guy. And from some of the reports that I'm hearing, and these weren't, what I'm saying here isn't necessarily confirmed, but from what the word on the grapevine is, he emptied 3 magazines out of a handgun at this tow truck driver, eventually killing the guy, all for doing his job. That is a level of anger that became so self-destructive that this young man has now ruined his life. All for what? A vehicle that he may not have been paying for in the first place? What was the point? What was the motivation? Was it worth it? What was the point of putting all of this effort into chasing down a tow truck driver who was literally only doing his job? There was nothing personal about him retrieving that vehicle. It's not like he went out of his way to retrieve that vehicle because he knew the man or was doing it out of some sort of malice. No, he probably didn't know the guy. Only had reason to pick the vehicle up because he received paperwork that said he needed to pick the vehicle up. And was doing so because he was contractually obligated to do. But because of this young man's anger, he lost it and decided to do something that cannot be taken back. And now he's going to be forced to take responsibility for it. And it's going to cost him dearly. He's going to have to pay a price that he very likely does not want to pay. Proverbs the 14th chapter 29th verse says, "Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly." You will make foolish decisions when you give in to your anger. When you allow your anger to take over and take control. How many times have you just look back over your own life? Because I've had to do it myself. Look back over my own life and assess the decisions that I've made in my own anger. Those moments where I've allowed my temper and my anger to take control, and the things that I've done, the things that I've said have been put out there, and I can't take back what happened in that moment. And now, because of what was done or said in anger, now I've got to deal with it because it's out there now. Anger is a sometimes slow acting poison, sometimes a fast acting poison, but it's a poison nonetheless because it can eventually destroy you. Not only can it destroy you, but it can destroy the people around you. It is something that it is necessary, absolutely necessary for us to maintain control, because if we don't control our emotions, they will control us. And anger especially, because anger will take over. It will take control over our thought processes. It will take over control of our actions, and you will enter a red haze and come out having done something or said something that you cannot take back. And all you're left with are the consequences. If you read Galatians 5:19 through the 21st verse, it warns us against the works of the flesh, one of which is anger. When the Bible expressly warns you against something, that's something that you ought to take careful consideration of. When the Bible names something specifically to be concerned about, that's something you ought to take very careful consideration of, because that's something that could cause great harm, not only to you as an individual, but even to your relationship with God. I talk a lot about God's blueprint for our lives on this podcast. And one of the ways in which Satan, I believe, attempts to derail and even in some cases destroy the blueprint that God has for our lives is by introducing uncontrollable anger into the equation. It's like tossing a lit match into a fireworks factory. Why would you do it? To prove that you can? Sounds like a great idea. Sure, you can, but why would you? Sure, you can, but the ultimate result is going to be absolutely horrific. The amount of damage that will be done is going to be terrible. So why would you? But see, we live in a society that teaches us that we don't necessarily have to take responsibility for our actions, and that all we have to do is shuffle the responsibility down to the next person and everything will be okay. When the reality is, everything that we do has a consequence. Every action that we take, both positive and negative, has a consequence. And if we're not mindful, we will find ourselves having to pay the consequences in a more deep and intimate fashion than we expected. Proverbs 15 chapter 1st verse says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." I've met a lot of people who felt as if it was important for them to have their say, no matter what. No matter what the circumstances were, it was important for them to have their say. And I understand, sometimes, no matter what the situation is, it feels better if you're able to speak your piece. I get it. But is it always necessary for you to say it the exact way that it played out in your head, without regard for how anybody else is going to feel? Because, truth be told, if we disregard the feelings of other people and only focus in on how we feel, there's going to be a lot of hurt feelings around. So if we don't take the time to be considerate of one another, with all the hurt feelings going on around us, there are going to be some responses that are going to cause a lot of problems. So when considering how to respond to someone, we want to de-escalate, and we always point that toward the police. Could we not consider how to de-escalate between one another? Is it always necessary to have your say the exact way you want to have it when talking to one another? No, it's not. I'm going to answer the question myself. No, it's not. I think it's important to remember that we, each of us, are under a certain amount of stress, a certain amount of pressure. And if we would take into consideration how each one of us feels, if we would take into consideration what's going on and how it makes us feel, I think we wouldn't be so quick to attempt to hurt one another. And we would be a lot more careful about running so hot toward one another. Proverbs 15:18 says, "A hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger quiets contention." It's not necessary to try to get people all wound up. I know somebody like that. Every time you turn around, they poking the bear. They getting somebody wound up about something. Can't never seem to be calm around them about anything, because every time you turn around, they trying to get somebody turned up. It's not necessary. As a matter of fact, it is very unnecessary. Focus in on what it is that God would have us to do. Trust that God has a better plan than the little short-term plan you have. Getting somebody told in the moment is not going to fix the long-term issue. It's not. It really isn't. But if we would just take the time to consider carefully what it is that we're going to say. Don't allow the poison that is anger to take possession of your heart. Then, and I believe only then, will you be able to accomplish what it is that you're supposed to be able to accomplish in the blueprint that God has designed for you. Guys, it's been great. I've enjoyed myself. Have a wonderful day. Again, God bless. One love. Peace.
Hey there, fellow listeners. As we wind down another inspiring episode of Blueprint for Life, we want to thank you for tuning in. Remember, you can always find more uplifting content and past episodes on our website, blueprintforlifepodcast.com, or you can find us on Amazon Music, Audible, or Spotify. Join us next time for more faith-filled conversations and stories that fuel your spirit. Until then, stay blessed and keep shining your light.